Hello, I'm Jodie Stewart and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre's Disaster Preparedness Project. How much do you understand about how disasters are managed across the Bega Valley Shire? Would you like to know more about better preparing Eden and surrounding villages for future disasters? Tune in to Prepared for Disaster every Wednesday morning at 11, right here on 2SEA, as I share useful information and chat to good people doing great things in preparedness, recovery and community resilience. Prepared for Disaster. It's all about building stronger, prepared local communities, ready to face more frequent disasters. Welcome to the Prepared for Disaster program, a new program about communities and disasters. I'm your host, Jodie Stewart, and I'm the Disaster Preparedness Coordinator for the Eden Community Access Centre. I'll be joining you fortnightly as we undertake a series of conversations about disasters and the role that communities do and can play in response to increasing disaster events. This show is produced and broadcast on the lands of the Thawa people of the Yuin Nation. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all First Nations people joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge First Nations sovereignty of the lands, air and waters, and that this sovereignty was never ceded. This is, was and always will be First Nations land. In this show, we will be discussing disasters and their impact. Some content may be distressing. Please look after yourself while listening. Or if you think this is not for you, you can come back to the broadcast in about an hour's time. The Prepared for Disaster program is part of the Disaster Preparedness Project. The Disaster Preparedness Project is an Eden Community Access Centre initiative. The project is funded through New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, formerly Resilience New South Wales, and is a 2-year funded initiative. The aim of the project is to bring the community together to develop a plan that can provide practical strategies for us to be better prepared for future disaster events, whether that be floods, pandemics, or fires. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Prepared for Disaster program. We have a fantastic show planned for you today. I'm joined in the studio by the fabulous Kaley Morrissey, Recovery and Resilience Project Officer for the Australian Red Cross, who is joining us to chat with us about the amazing work that the Red Cross have been doing in the Bega Valley and here in Eden. And we are celebrating Volunteers Month and all the wonderful volunteers doing great and vital work in our community. And I'm also joined by the amazing Jodie Holsworth, who is the team leader for the Red Cross Emergency Service Volunteer Team. Welcome, Jodie and Kaley, to the show. Thank you so much for being here. So, Kaley and Jodie, we'd like to start our show by our guests sharing their stories, because our guests aren't just talking heads, they're flesh and blood human beings, and we want to hear all about you. So, Kaley, I'd like to start with you. What is the Kaley Morrissey story? What makes you tick? Tell us your story.
Thanks, Jodie. Thanks so much for having us today. I really appreciate it. So my story, I am a fairly newcomer to the Bega Valley. My husband and I moved here just before the fires, actually, and we moved from the North Coast. It's something that we've wanted to do for many, many years. Back in the day, my husband's family had a farm down Tanawangalo way, quite a large property, and I think it was always in his life vision to end up back in the Bega Valley. So we live at Coolagalite, or just out of Cobargo, on the edge of Coolagalite, on a little property, and we're just loving living here, loving the community, loving the people.
Awesome. Jodie, what's your story?
Yes, thank you, Jodie, for having us. It's a great opportunity to talk, especially about volunteers. I was born and raised in Bega. I worked for a while in Bega and then in Sydney for 10 years before retiring back into the valley. The valley's home to me, and I enjoy the space and the fresh air and community. I've got a background in management, work health and safety and injury management, but my passions are family, gardening, sewing, history and volunteering.
Awesome. A fellow historian. I like it. And also a fellow Bega resident. I resided in Bega myself as well. Welcome, Kaley and Jodie to the show. Now, Kaley, I'd like to start with you, and if you can just talk to us a little bit about your role. You are the current Red Cross Recovery and Resilience Officer for the Bega Valley Shire. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Jodie. So I've been in this role since just after the 1920 bushfires, and it's a bushfire recovery role. I am the sole person for our organisation that is in this role in this LGA at the moment. My role is quite varied and vast. It entails initially, after the disaster, getting onto the ground, talking with people, making sure that I was across the needs of the communities and individuals that I was speaking to. We're here to support people, to link them to information and resources. We were supporting people with grants, but I think further to the role, it does broaden out after that initial recovery period, and so we've been doing things like providing training and expertise in the field with local government and different community groups and agencies. We have a big role in advocacy, so we sit on all of the recovery committees and collaborate with other organizations and agencies in the recovery. And when I say advocacy, that comes through our connection to community, having conversations with community on a regular basis, and then being able to push those needs up through different levels of government. Yeah.
So a very, very busy,
very busy.
but very, very vital role that you,
Yes.
you play in the community,
and
Kaley.
And there's a lot of things that happen in between as well that I haven't mentioned.
Yes. So the Red Cross has a really long history of working with communities before and after disasters. So what is the role of the Red Cross before, during and after these disaster events, Kaley?
So as you pointed out, we do have a very long and extensive history in disaster management and emergency management, and we do work in all phases of disaster. We actually have an MOU with government, and so we are an official emergency service. A lot of people don't realize that. But we have an emergency service stream in Red Cross, but of course Red Cross does many things. They have many programs, but today we're talking about emergency services. So we work with communities to help them prepare for disasters, and we do that in many ways. Jodie will be talking to you later about how important our volunteer force is in this work. But we provide training, and we talk to communities about the importance of preparedness, and help them to be prepared, basically, to understand the importance of being prepared, and then to create their own plans for preparedness. During the disaster and the response phase, we are there on the ground. We are activated and mandated to be in evacuation centers. And again, Jodie will speak to you about that a bit more. We provide psychological first aid and psychosocial support to people attending those evacuation centers. And then in the recovery phase, we kick into pretty much immediately after the disaster. We're on the ground doing outreach and going out into communities to, again, provide psychosocial support and talk to people about their needs, link them and connect them to resources and information and services. That's a really important part of what we do in the recovery. And then in the long-term recovery, I suppose what I didn't say before is my role is, a big part of my role is community development. So what we do is we wrap around communities to help to support their own initiatives in the recovery. So, we believe that community-led recovery is the most important and most vital way that communities can recover, is if they're involved. And sometimes they just need a little bit of support, a wraparound support, so we help them in that way.
Yeah, awesome. A community-facing role with lots of support and advocacy. Thank you, Kaley. We're going to break for a song, and we're going to hear from Annie Lennox and sing.
This is a call for the national implementation of mother-to-child transmission prevention program in all the maternity hospitals in South Africa. The song is Siyayazi Jikelele.
Sing, my sister, sing.
Hello, thanks for joining us, and thank you for hanging in with us there. We were just having a few microphone issues, trying to work out how we can come across loud and clear for you all out there. If you were just joining us, that was Sing by the incomparable Annie Lennox. I'm joined by Kaley Morrissey, Recovery and Resilience Project Officer for the Australian Red Cross, and Red Cross volunteer Jodie Holsworth. Jodie and Kaley are joining me today to share with us all the amazing work Red Cross are doing here in our community. Now, Kaley, I'd like to come back to you. I want you, if you could talk to us a little bit about, because I know that Red Cross, you're working quite actively here in the community, both in the Bega Valley, but also here in the community of Eden. So how has the Red Cross been working with communities?
Well, as I said before, you know, as a community development professional, we're here to really find out what the community wants, and where their direction what is taking them, and then to support them to fulfill, you know, their vision, and their ideas for what needs to happen and for projects and different things. So. We've been working with across the Bega Valley, but I did want to mention that our recovery program does extend across the state. But in terms of the Bega Valley, we've been working in every village, every area as much as possible. Sorry, what was the question again? I missed it. Sorry, Jodie.
No, that's okay. I'm just interested to learn of all the work you've been doing here in the Bega Valley Shire and here in the Eden area.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, as I said, during the recovery, we provided training. So, we supported council with some recovery training. We've been supporting communities with preparedness training. We've done programs in the library. We have, you know, worked on the ground with different initiatives. You know, I guess I could tell you about a recent initiative. Last weekend we were supporting the Kwama Owner Builders group, and they are a group of individuals that got together to support each other through their rebuilds. They got a bit of funding, and they decided they wanted to have an event, a one-day event that was a bit of a field trip that went around looking at different building projects. And we had a bit of a long table lunch, which was I think I did want to say part of Red Cross's program. What we believe is social connection is a really big part of recovery, and that was something that was a bit stymied with COVID. It did delay the recovery. People didn't get out straight away to share their experiences with each other. So commonly, the projects that we support will have a social connection element. So that long table lunch, while it sounds, you know, a bit fluffy, it is actually an integral part of the recovery. And that was a very successful event. So the two community leaders that were driving that project, they just needed a little bit of wraparound support. So myself and another agency and council were there to kind of assist with skills necessary to put on an event of that kind. That's just one example. We've done, I think I've been involved in about 40 projects across the Shire. I won't go into all of them unless you want me to pick another one I could talk about. No. I'll talk about my work here in Eden. I mean, I can. Another important way that Red Cross works is we're big collaborators, so we know we can't do it alone. And you've talked a little bit about the Eden Disaster Preparedness Project, I'm sure, on this show, and Red Cross has been an important partner in that work. There was no point in us coming in and doing preparedness work and duplicating what your project is trying to achieve. So we like to be friends with people that are doing this work. So we've worked closely together to engage communities and have conversations around preparedness. And that's been about a 2-year project. So we've been doing a lot of work there.
Yes, collaboration is where it's at. And as you say, it's you can't do these things on your own, and it's the same with community to be able to support and partner and bring people together. And also, your long table lunch and you're bringing the owner builders together. I think that speaks to the diversity of recovery as well. So many communities on the far south coast, as you are aware, Kaley, are still recovering from these cascading disaster events. So we've had fires and flooding and COVID. Now, recovery has no endpoint, and it can be a very long and winding road. So in your work with communities, what successful recovery models have you seen, and what do you believe made them so successful?
Look, there's a couple, and I want to actually make sure that I say that all of the communities I've worked with, including those that are the smaller communities that are rural and remote, they've been doing the best they can in a very difficult situation. The as I said, the recovery has been delayed, and I think the scale of this disaster has shown us that for a long time people just didn't have the capacity to get out and get involved with their community. But some of the models, successful models that I've seen, are ones that are community driven. So I think programs that emphasize community engagement and participation are really the most effective in the recovery. Communities where they come together and drive their own recovery and are community led and are involved in decision making, in the decision making processes. Those are the most successful communities that band together and work with agencies and governments. Those, in my experience, those communities are recovering well. If you wanted me to give an example, I'd say that there's a community, it's not necessarily in the Bega Valley, but some people may have heard of the group in Malakuta who formed a community recovery committee. And so from the very beginning, that committee was made up of community members that were elected by their community to drive their own recovery. And I think that community's done really very well. There's some great work going on in Cabargo as well. The community band together very quickly and mobilized to make sure that they had a voice in the recovery. And as I said, that doesn't discount what other communities have done. As I said, I think that there was a lack of capacity for a long time just because people were individually recovering. I think people are understanding the power of collectively coming together to be connected as a strong voice, and they're starting to do that now.
Yeah, and you spoke earlier about the importance of social connection, which is very much part of that coming together and forming those self-determining communities that are so important to building resilience.
That's right, and I just wanted to say we do know that communities that are connected, it's evidence-based that they do fare better when a disaster does hit. Those connections are vital for community strength. And cohesion.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often say here on the Prepared for Disaster show that a well-connected community is a well-prepared community, and Kaley's just echoed those sentiments as well. So Kaley, what do you see is the biggest challenge for recovery and resilience in regional and rural areas? And what are some of the opportunities as well?
Okay. I think some of the challenges have been just the fact that we are rural and remote. I think it's harder to get resources to these areas. I think definitely in the recovery, communication has been a big issue. I think the fact that mobile towers go down and internet is hindered. And also just the isolation of the geographic isolation of people. Sometimes the information doesn't filter through as quickly as possible. People aren't as aware as they could be of support services. We've heard consistently that a lot of people didn't feel comfortable coming out to get support. And so we've tried as much as possible to go in. But again, that takes a lot of resources. Not just from Red Cross, but from all agencies. So another thing in our community particularly is the socioeconomic factors. So, people that have already had challenges in their life, then when they face a disaster, there is that kind of exacerbates the challenge. So in many ways, we need actually more resources than, say, a city, or, there's more expertise, more people with capacity in those larger areas. And that is definitely one of the limitations here, is the lack of capacity and expertise, I would say.
So, in terms of some of the opportunities, and I know you and I have been working quite closely through the disaster preparedness project, and you've been talking a lot with community about Red Cross's community-led resilience teams. I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about them and some of the opportunities they pose for community.
Yeah, sure. The community-led resilience teams are a Red Cross initiative and model which brings people and communities together to work on their own preparedness and to be prepared. The basic premise of a CRT, really the starting point, is developing communication trees in the community so that when a disaster happens, community can easily have information from agencies. So, for instance, RFS or SES come down through a chain through the CRT and out to individuals. And likewise, information would then be filtered up through the community through to the agencies. That's in its simplest form, that's a CRT. But what CRTs continue to do as they develop is bring preparedness knowledge and education to their communities. They will link them with the combat agencies. They'll have events. An example would be that in Bimboka, for instance, the Bimboka CRT asked to meet with the local emergency management officer at council, so we had a lunch and he was able to come up and explain to them and talk to them about our local emergency management plans and go over some of the legislation that's involved in emergencies. And so the CRT then can go out to the community and explain to community some of this information that they've learned.
It's a really fantastic model, and some of the priorities that we have identified through our disaster preparedness community engagement was communication, was a community connectedness and education, training and information, and Red Cross community-led resilience teams actually addresses a lot of those priorities, and it is an example of self-determining communities in action as well. It's a really fantastic model. Thank you so much, Kaley. We're just going to have a break and we're going to come back and talk to Jodie Holdsworth, who's going to talk to us about volunteering and the Red Cross. So we're going to hear from Supertramp, Give a Little Bit. Hello, welcome back to the Prepared for Disaster show. If you are just joining us, you missed a fabulous conversation with the awesome Kaley Morrissey, who is the Recovery and Resilience Project Officer for the Australian Red Cross. Kaley and I were talking about the amazing work that the Red Cross are doing here in the Bega Valley and in Eden specifically. Now, at the end of the show, Kaley and I have a very special announcement, so you need to stay tuned for that. But also stay tuned for this wonderful chat that we're about to have with the wonderful Jodie Holdsworth, who is a Red Cross volunteer. And I'm so very, very glad actually that we did play Natalie Merchant's Kind and Generous, because it is a wonderful segue into celebrating our fabulous volunteers. Now, the month of May is Volunteers Month, and we are celebrating all of our amazing volunteers. Now, according to the 2016 Giving Australian report, 3.6 million Australians are engaged in volunteer work, contributing some 932 million hours. Volunteers are the backbone of communities, particularly in regional and rural communities. Now, the Red Cross, the Australian Red Cross, has 34,046 volunteers, and it is one of the largest humanitarian organisations in the world. Now, Jodie, what inspired you to volunteer with the Red Cross?
Right. I always said that when I had more time, I'd volunteer, and then I retired and I did have more time. The communities rely on volunteers for so many things, and the organisations I volunteer with I heard about through friends. I found out a bit more about the organisations and thought they would be a good fit for what I could offer and what they did for community.
Wonderful. So what does your role entail? What does a typical day look like as a Red Cross volunteer?
I'm the team leader for Bega Red Cross Emergency Services, as you said, as a volunteer. At present, it covers the communities around Bega, Tathra, Bermagui, Cobargo, Bemboka and Candelo. We're a small team. I coordinate the team with significant events such as fire, flood and pandemic. We work really closely with the Merimbula Emergency Services team, and there's also an emergency services team at Cooma and Narooma, and we help each other out when there is an event. It's not really a daily or even a weekly role. Throughout the year, Red Cross roll out initiatives, and the main initiatives focus around preparedness, and during events you can see people that are more prepared and how they cope. We also have initiatives around what we're going to do if there is an activation, and initiatives around recovery and what we can do for community during that. The role of the team is heavily supported by Red Cross. We're trained by them and we work within their established programs and provide feedback to them.
Excellent. So you were volunteering during and after the 2019 and 2020 bushfires. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What was your role, and how were you able to manage this role with your own experience of the fires?
Yes, our team was involved in the 1920 fires, and most of us had previous experience working in a fire event with the Yankees Gap fire at Bemboka, and then of course the Tathra fires. And some had experience working in other events like the monsoon in Townsville and other things around the country. Summer in Australia is always a time to be prepared and ready for a fire, and it always helps if you have a personal plan in place first, so you know whether you're then able to volunteer if an event comes up. We are kept informed by Red Cross of how major events are evolving. If we're called to activation, the team rallies, we work out a roster, and we start to set up at nominated formal evacuation centres. All the volunteers are trained in psychological first aid, and our role is to greet people as they come into the centre, help them register for the Register and Reunite system. So if people are looking to see if people are safe, they can contact the service and find out. We also listen to people's story as they come in and link them with services that are set up in the evacuation centres. Those other services might include a need for emergency accommodation. Anglicare might be helping out with some clothing or some and food. There's all sorts of roles that happen, and we're just part of that big team in an evacuation centre that help people out. After the evacuation centres closed down, we move on to recovery, and we started recovery after the Tathra fire, and Bega Valley Shire Council really led the way in setting up a recovery centre, and it was quite intensive, the work we did with the community. Any of the families that had registered as being affected, we manned phones to contact them and see how they were going and link them with services. And the same happened after the 1920 fires. We set up within the council building to work with all the other agencies in the recovery process. At the same time we were doing that, we were going out into community and going from property to property and door to door, asking people where they were at, and linking them with services as well. If they weren't able to leave their properties, we could give them information about rural aid or Anglicare, any of the other agencies that were offering help. And of course, as you have said, recovery is such a long-term process, and every individual takes it at their own pace, and they have their own needs and I guess things that hold them back from moving forward. But we continue to work, and I guess recovery starts to merge into preparedness again, and we start the cycle over again.
Yes, right. And being a local person, it'd be wonderful for people to come into the centre and see a familiar face.
You would hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of organised chaos, and you do what you can, and you're exhausted at the end of the day from smiling and hearing the stories and trying not to get too emotionally involved. But it's that close involvement that makes it all the more rewarding to do and be a volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Red Cross employs a large cohort of volunteers, as I mentioned, and you've touched on a little bit about the work that you do. But what motivates you to do what you do, Judy?
Of course, it's unpaid work, and that was important to me because I was retired. I didn't want to work anymore. I did the role because I believe volunteers are genuinely needed in a community, and I trust Red Cross, and I believe I can contribute something. So I guess those sort of three things.
Excellent, excellent. So what would you say, Judy, to someone who might be tossing up whether or not to volunteer in the community?
Yes, we all know that communities rely on volunteers for so many essential services, not just simple things. Really complex services are provided by volunteers, and more volunteers are always needed. And most people in small communities belong to one or more volunteer organisations, so we know that it's people's time is stretched and their resources. We would certainly love more volunteers, and we need more volunteers. And I'd say to anyone considering a volunteering role to find out about the role and how the organisation supports you through that role. Red Cross has a really, a thorough recruitment process. It has ongoing support and training. As I said, everyone has regular psychological first aid training and ongoing development, which helps you invest more in the organisation but also in your community. I think if you go into it with the right intentions, you'll get so much more out of it than you put into it. You learn much more about your community, you develop great skills and really good relationships.
Excellent, excellent. Some great reasons there, and you've sold me, Judy. So if our listeners,
sign up to
yes,
Judy?
yes,
Sign here.
yes, sign here. Hand me the pen. So Judy and Kaley, if people are interested in volunteering for the Red Cross, how do they go about that?
It's as easy as Googling online for Red Cross, and there's a volunteers button there that they can press and read the information. Have you got anything more?
Yeah,
Kaley?
so it takes you through to information. If you click through to the volunteer page, and they ask you to submit, a little request. We do have actually an official recruitment process, so we will have a chat with you to make sure that you have the capacity to be the volunteer, and we just take you through an onboarding process, which is online, quite simple to do, and then an induction process, and then your training begins, and then you'll be linked with a local team. I did want to say we do have two teams in the Bega Valley. We have the Marimbula team, which is pretty much everything Bega and South, and then we have the Bega team, which is Bega and North. So we do have two active teams in the Bega Valley. Some LGAs, depending on their size, have more teams.
Excellent, excellent. So if you're interested in volunteering for the Red Cross, just Google Australian Red Cross and volunteers and click on the link. And as Kaley said, there is a very comprehensive volunteer in induction as well. We're going to have a little bit of a break and we are going to attempt to hear from Supertramp again and give a little bit, which I think is a very relevant song to be playing as we're celebrating Volunteer Month. Hello, welcome back. We got there in the end and we just heard from Give a Little Bit by Supertramp. Now, while you were all listening to Supertramp, we were having a conversation about two fairly significant awards that you were awarded, Jodie. You were awarded the New South Wales Premier Bushfire Citation and the National Emergency Medal. That is very impressive. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Jodie?
I can. I wasn't the only person, of course, to get this award. The state and federal government decided to put this recognition in place for volunteers who contributed towards the emergency. It was, as I said, very, very humbling, and for myself and other members of our team to get those awards. The recognition was nice, but of course we don't go into it for that, and it was a complete surprise when the state and federal government decided to roll out these awards. But it was appreciated, and it's something to look back on with pride, and doesn't really encourage us to continue to volunteer because we would have anyway, but it was nice.
Yeah, the recognition is always lovely, particularly coming from our state and federal departments. Awesome work. Now, Kaley, I want to return to you, the disaster preparedness team, myself, Deb and Sharon. We've been working together to plan a really exciting event coming up in Eden on the Friday, June the 9th. Do you want to tell our listeners all about it?
Oh, I'd be thrilled to tell everyone about it. It's going to be a great event, and Red Cross is partnering with the Eden Disaster Preparedness Project and the museum, the local Eden Museum, to run this event. And basically, it's called Tales as Old as Time. This is a Red Cross initiative that was born out of actually speaking to some of our CRTs in the state, where they expressed the importance of community knowledge, particularly during a natural disaster, and local knowledge and history. So what the event does is it brings together people that have been in the area for a long time, that have lived in the area and that have that local knowledge and history. It brings them together to form a panel where they discuss stories of old. They don't necessarily talk strictly about emergencies or disasters. They talk about the history of the town, which is really important, particularly for new community members, people coming to the area that don't know the history of the town. It's a really lovely evening. We did one recently in Bimboka, and Paul West was the MC. Fortunately, we've secured Paul again for the Eden event, and it brought together in Bimboka. We actually had 85 people on the night. We won't have, unfortunately, room in the venue that we're holding it in for 85 people, but we do have probably enough chairs for those who are interested to come along and hear these stories. It's a very good way for communities to connect as well. Again, that's to have a shared understanding of what's happened in the town over time. And it's a really entertaining event as well. And so we're really excited about this. And it's this Tales as Old of Time as Time is going to be held in the lovely historic Australasia Hotel. So if you haven't been down to the hotel yet, it's a wonderful opportunity to see it.
Yes, we're very, very excited about this. And I can say that the panel will include some of Eden's best storytellers, including our very own Project Lab member, Peter Whiter, who'll be coming along and talking about his activism in saving the hotel Australasia. So it's a great venue to be holding these types of conversations, and we're very, very excited about it. So book that into your diary, Friday, June the 9th, 6:30 at the beautiful Hotel Australasia. As I said, some of Eden's best storytellers will be coming along to share their stories of Eden and surrounds. And if you're interested and you want to register for this event, you can contact Deb at the Eden Community Access Centre on 02 64 96 3970. So, Kaley, if people are interested to learn more about Red Cross programs, what should they do?
Well, again, our website is probably the best place to go. We have a whole section on recovery and preparedness. There's a thorough listing of things that Red Cross offers. And that's probably the best place. Or I'm happy, if anyone would like to ring me directly, I'm happy to speak to them. My number is 0499 303 516. And again, happy to have a chat about our programs.
Excellent. I want to thank Kaley and Jodie so much for coming on to the show and talking to us today. It was a fantastic episode. Just finally, before we go though, don't forget about our Project Lab, the Disaster Preparedness Project Lab. We hold fortnightly labs at the Eden Library event space. The Project Lab is a really welcoming and inclusive space for the community to come together and be supported to develop community projects. We're growing a really vibrant and productive community at our labs. Come along, even if you're just a bit curious and want to find out a little bit more about us. We'll be holding our next lab on Thursday, May 25th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Eden Library event space. We provide you with a really yummy dinner and some really good company, so please do come along. And also make sure you tune in next week for a repeat of this episode if you want to listen in again, or if you want to tell a friend or a neighbour all about us, tell them that they can tune in next week, same time, to hear this episode. If not, we'll be broadcasting live Wednesday, 31st of May. I'll be chatting to more brilliant community members doing amazing things in their community. So until then, be well and stay connected.
Oh, let's get this in one.
Yeah, oh, we get it spot on.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.